Would you steal it? If you could, would you steal this election? Is it that bad that you'd justify stealing?
We don't steal elections. Your party does.
Oh, baby, a triple!
Okay. But if you could, would you? Is it that dire? Is it worth that doing that?
No, but would I steal an election? Would you?
What about if it was David Duke versus Hillary Clinton?
What's his position on TPP and open border? No, of course not. Give me a break. Would you vote for David Duke to stop Trump?
Is he that different?
Oh, give me a break.
Trump retweets white supremacists all
He
the
does
time?
not. I don't even think David Duke exists. He appears every 4 years, so you can use him as a boogeyman and ask. No, look, Trump has not talked to him, talked about him, had him speak at the convention. Hillary has the terrorist father who shot up the Orlando nightclub sitting behind her at a rally. Can we have her disavow him?
My screws are loose. Don't call my hand, cause you gon' make me act a hot damn fool. Dead discussion. You will not win, cause I will not lose.
It's a total lie that illegal immigrants do not get all kinds of government assistance. Please do Google that. But don't just look up. Any idiot can write on the internet. Look it up. They can get food stamps, they go into emergency rooms, they get schooling, they get English as a second language, they get the SNAP program. They get full health care in California. It is not saying that illegal immigrants are the little guy. They're not our guys. Americans don't have a problem paying for our own poor, our own sick, our own injured. But the idea is we're like a family. We're all in this together.
Aren't you in favor of welfare reform?
And you say, but for the grace of God go I. Okay, but you don't get to, this isn't the entire world we're talking about. We're not turning America into, the universe's charity ward. We need to take care of our own. And that's what's hurting the little guy. The reason illegal immigrants say they're coming for family reunification is because that's what got you a free bus pass and a box lunch in the Obama era. Whatever they need to say to be moved into the interior of the country. But this idea that, you can't break up my family. Well, okay, all of you go back then.
Let's play the game. You so long, you be up, they get the pain. I don't wanna hear what you meant, do not explain.
I think it is extremely elitist and snooty. I'm quite sure you all wouldn't like it if your kids came home from school and they sounded like Sarah Palin. I think that would be a cultural shock for you. Certainly in California, most of the neighborhoods that have gone all Hispanic are black neighborhoods, and not through casual movement. One of the ways our culture changes with immigration, both legal and illegal, is there is not a lot of tolerance, as much tolerance as Americans have. You have black gangs, or rather Hispanic gangs, going into the black neighborhoods, screaming epithets, throwing bottles at their houses. The LA Times has written this up extensively. So I think it's very sneering and mocking of you to be referring to mostly African American and other immigrant neighborhoods that suddenly aren't speaking English, and they're afraid of Spanish. No, they think that their kids shouldn't be turned away from a job at McDonald's because they don't speak Spanish. Look, African Americans obviously got the short end of the stick for about 200 years. This is why I was explaining on the last panel. This is why we have civil rights. This is why we have constitutional provisions. This is why we allow, this is why we have affirmative action. It wasn't the Rainbow Coalition. It was to make up, to redress specific grievances done to African Americans, slavery, Jim Crow laws, and now suddenly, everybody's running across the border and, me too, I'm part of this. No, civil rights are for African Americans. They are not for people who arrived yesterday or last week. We didn't do anything to you. Republicans didn't do anything to anybody.
I mean, there's just, wow, I don't even know where to start. So, in that long-winded rant, you proceeded to insult people in a racist way and then have the audacity to say that our immigration policies are racist or allowing more immigrants in would lead to more racism. It's absurd.
How is anything I said racist?
How is what you said? You just talked about people speaking Spanish and how parents don't want to hear that because they're concerned that their kids might want to end up working at McDonald's. You're assuming that people are coming into this country.
No, you weren't listening.
Yeah.
No, there was a testimony before Congress from LA communities where black witnesses were going in saying, my kid applied to the local McDonald's, they wouldn't hire him because he didn't speak Spanish. It is mostly black communities that are being overwhelmed with illegal immigrants, and to be mocking them and saying they're afraid of Spanish people, I think is very dismissive and insulting.
Put them all in a line at an AK-47, a revolver, and see if I get away with it now that I ain't as big as
I agree. I wish we could have Netanyahu as our president, but, you know, how would America react if these missiles were being shot into our country? Well, I'll tell you how America would react to what's happening in Israel right now. More than 100 tunnels have been found on our border to smuggle in weapons, to guns.
I was inside
they're
one.
Invading, they're murdering, they're raping. The head of the DEA said about a year ago that he thinks the surge of homicide in Chicago is a Mexican drug cartel. We are being invaded, and I just wish people would talk about our border the way, at least people like you and I talk about, the way we talk about Israel's border. We need a Netanyahu here. Can you imagine all these, I mean, yes, sometimes Palestinian kids get killed. That's because they're associated with a terrorist organization that is harming Israel. And Netanyahu doesn't care what the religious leaders say, weeping about Palestinian children. He doesn't care what the UN says. He doesn't care what the media says. We are a country, we have borders, and Netanyahu enforces them. Why can't we do that in America?
So like collapse, I'm spilling.
So let me start with this question. Now that Stephen Colbert has broken character, and you've outlasted it, is it time for you to break character?
I don't know why liberals find it comforting to think this is a character. I'm beating you guys, but it's an act. Maybe you gotta up your game. If I'm writing 11 New York Times bestsellers and
the exciting portion where we go through the footnotes of my book.
Well, while he's taking... No, I got it. I got it right here. This is how reliable Anne is. Let me just read something. This is an absolutely true story. Treason came out about a week before I had to finish my book, about 10 days. So I didn't have a chance to go through it the way I went through Slander. So I didn't go through your book, for my book. So a few weeks later, after my book was to bed, my wife and I went out to dinner early. I put Treason in my library with the books. And my wife and I are going out the back way.
She'll autograph it for you if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm sure. Good. I mean, good. I'll take, whatever. Anyway, so Franny's coming with me, and she says, I got to put on lipstick. So she goes back to get on some lipstick, and I look in the bookshelf, I see Treason, I say, Andy, that was my assistant, I said, I'll bet you I can find a lie in the book before Franny gets her lipstick on. So I pull it out, and I just go like, boom, and I turned it to, I was going like this. And I turned it to, and I scanned the pages, and I see New York Times. And whenever I see New York Times, I know Anne's lied. So here it is. New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman sniffed that racial profiling was not, quote, civilized. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Let me say that sentence again. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, and then in quotes, religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Well, Andy had been my researcher. He knew what to do. He nexused religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Boom. He got it. It actually highlights it. You've nexused. So this is what it was. It was a December 26th New York Times op-ed piece by Thomas Friedman called "Naked Air," and in it he suggests that they make people fly naked. He says, think about it. If everyone flew naked, not only would you never have to worry about the passenger next to you carrying box cutters or exploding shoes, but no religious fundamentalists of any stripe would ever be caught dead flying nude. So, but let me read the sentence again, Ann. So wait a minute. This is how reliable that it's Kerry blamed the American character for this.
Okay, you read the sentence, and I want to give her a chance.
He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, religious fundamentalists of any stripe.
Okay. You don't have a backpack, but
No, I do have a watch. If you could keep an eye on it for these long, boring stories, because I would like equal time. And
I am trying to give everybody equal time. Please go ahead.
If this whole debate is going to be about Ann Coulter, I'm just not prepared on Ann Coulter. Liberals think that you can't paraphrase an article. You actually, conservative books would be nothing but an Encyclopedia Britannica of the entire droning, boring article. You have to attach them all. You can never paraphrase something. My paraphrase was absolutely accurate. Thomas Friedman is talking about how to keep the airline safe after 9/11, after 20 years of relentless attacks. Senator Norm Coleman.
Okay.
Oh, that polite decorum of the liberals. He is talking about how to respond to the relentless attacks by Muslims on American airlines, on American embassies, on Americans, on Italian cruise ships, and so on. And what his facetious proposal is, he says after an attack like 9/11, there are two solutions. We can either learn to live with much higher levels of risk, or we can be much more controlled as a society. On a side note, I have another solution. It's a little something I've worked up. I like to call it racial profiling. But his suggestion is that we fly naked because two advantages to that. One is you'd catch the guys with the box cutters, and second, it would be a deterrent to religious fundamentalists of both stripes, or of all stripes. That is Muslim extremists.
On September 14, 2001, you said that America should invade Muslim countries and convert them to Christianity. You also said that we should get all the Muslims to boycott all airlines. When asked what the alternative modes of transportation were, you suggested flying carpet.
Hang on, she's reading my lines. Go on.
Question. First of all, as a 17-year-old student of this university, Muslim, should I be converted to Christianity? Second of all, since I don't have a magic carpet, what other modes do you suggest?
First, you dropped a line from the first quote that invader countries kill their leaders and convert them to Christianity. And, by the way, this shows, I thought it was just, American public schools that produced ignorant people. What America has done after World War II, after the Korean War, after we won World War II, the emperor went to MacArthur and said, okay, we're ready to convert. And MacArthur said, well, actually, we don't convert people forcibly. Also, as he's described, he said he didn't know whether to convert them to Protestantism or Catholicism. But he put out the call for Christian missionaries to come to Japan, and they poured in. And you don't convert people forcibly, but Christian missionaries have been operating throughout Japan for years, and they certainly have religious freedom in Japan. And I would add, we haven't heard a peep out of it.
A peep out of them.
After the Korean War, the exact same thing happened. A call was put out for Christian missionaries to go into South Korea. The Christian missionaries poured in, and it is one of the greatest success stories of Christianity. You'll see at least on American college campuses. What motivated you for teaching me to kill?